And what I discovered is by not even worrying about the business happens. And I know that doesn't sound possible. I'm telling you, that is what has happened in my 20 plus years experience. I can't tell you the number of opportunities I've bumped into because I'm authentically asking questions about, because I really do want to know people's story.
All right, good morning. We'll get started. And this is exciting. Andre and I have been talking for quite some time about getting together and having a conversation, which can go 1,000 places. When Andre and I talk, it's like 15 minutes turns into 2 hours because you never know where it's going to go. So we don't know what all we'll talk about today, but it'll be exciting. But one of the things that I know Andre and I have had several really intriguing conversations about is something a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and business leaders I've talked to over the years struggle with, which is, how to effectively sell. A lot of people, in that always be closing mindset, think I've got to find a way to do a deal with everyone. And that doesn't always create the best value for the customer and for your organization. And Andre just has one of those unique perspectives on selling value and creating a relationship that sometimes means not doing a deal. And so I thought we would go down that path and explore that a little bit and brainstorm that a bit. But before we get going, why don't you just give folks a little bit of background, Andre, of things you've done and what brought you to this point for folks that don't know so much about you.
Well, I appreciate it, Randy. It is good to be with everyone. I consider it a privilege rather, to be even considered to be able to talk to your team. I've sat on the other end of listening and learning, and I'm always a learner, right? So I'm thrilled to be here this morning. Thanks for spending some time with us. I hope it will be informative. But my background really hovers around engaging with people who run companies, entrepreneurs, CEOs, just decision makers, right? I've done 20 plus years of being around these folks and trying to figure out at the end of the day what it is that they need and what they want, and trying to really build a brand that is really about solving problems versus pushing my agenda, which is a little bit unique. And so my experience really straddles a lot of different segments. One would be I straddle the for-profit business and also on the nonprofit side, and I do some mentoring, and then I kind of dabble and play around in the mentoring coaching space, and have consulted with firms and we've got a cohort that we go in and we talk about leadership, culture, a little bit of diversity, equity, inclusion, tactics and strategies, and we really try to help leaders understand how to be present in the moment. So all of that experience, 21 years or 20 plus years of experience, has opened quite a few doors for me. And so Randy and I got connected, I think, through my good friend Linda Endicott, and we had some shared things that we believed in, and I have some non-negotiables. And so my background, again, is on the for-profit, nonprofit side, too many boards to name, but very involved in the community, advisory committees. I help several nonprofits just on a volunteer basis in terms of leadership development, et cetera. So that's kind of my background. And so when I talk about some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, just understand they're battle tested. It's not a system. If you can just pull back what's in it for you and you can listen, because the best gift you can give to someone else is to listen. And so what I'm going to present to you or talk to you about, and what I hope this will be is, if we can have enough time to do this, is an engagement morning where we're going to be sharing some thoughts, some ideas. You have some responses. I would tell you as I get into some of this, don't feel like this is something you have to implement, right? These are just ideas. There are ways to leverage building relationships in ways that I don't see being leveraged. And that's what I'll share with you today. So what I wanted to start with is I want to throw some questions in the chat, and I want you thinking. One question, and I won't read through all these questions. I'm going to post these so that you guys can kind of get it, and don't answer them out loud. We can talk about them as we get into this, but I just want you to think, what adjustments have you made during the pandemic? whatever that means to you. Think about your adjustment. What did you have to do in the pandemic that you didn't ordinarily have to do? Has your leadership style changed during the pandemic? The thing that I like best about this question is, what gifts did you receive from the pandemic? Now, that speaks a lot to gratitude, being present in the moment, thinking about the glass being half full, not half empty. Who are your business advocates? Right? Who are the people that talk about you when you're not present in the room? And then when they say what they're going to say, what is it that they say about you? And then one of the things I was talking to my good friend David Anderson from New Vision just Thursday at lunch that really kind of dawned on me was, we started talking about, he's an econ guy and I'm not, so he was doing most of the talking, but he was talking about what really is your personal value proposition and what's the market opportunity for your brand. Now, I'll tie all that sort of together for you, but I just want you to really to begin to think about what people think about you when your name pops up, when you enter a room, when you're meeting with people, when you're emailing for meetings, when you're calling out for meetings. This won't be about sales, really. It'll be about how to generate interest in the brand that is you, which generates revenue. That's what I talk about. So I think Randy's put those in the chat. I think he has, so I'll leave that alone. So I'll come out of that. So I want to talk to you guys about, oftentimes when we're trying to meet with a company, we're trying to fundraise, we're trying to get a consensus to do whatever we want to do. You open that box. A lot of time we have a presentation. It's all about us. I got all these great things, and we're doing all the talking. What we haven't done, though, is got enough intelligence from the person we're across from to really understand where their challenges are. And so what I want to help you do is to understand the philosophical view of that, why going in with no agenda makes more sense than having a agenda. And I want to set this stage too. I want you to think about, we've all dated, some of us are married, some of us are divorced, some of us have had relationships, some of us are entering new relationships, whatever your situation is. And I want you to think, if after that first meeting with your significant other, you just got done with coffee, you're wrapping up, and you say to this person, hey, this has been awesome. I've got a ring in my pocket. My mother's in the car. Hey, why don't we just go ahead and get married now? Now that seems weird, right? But it's what we do when we're meeting with prospects and clients. We hear one thing and we automatically think we should consummate the marriage, and off we go. What I would tell you is, I have built a career off of no agenda, listening, pushing. Certainly I have intelligence about people I'm meeting with. Oftentimes, and Randy and I've talked about this too, when I'm meeting with people, whether it's coffee, lunch, a cocktail, a virtual call, because we're doing more of that today, I have intelligence about who I'm in front of. It may be specific to the business that I'm in, it may not. But what happens though is you build these business advocates that, if you're meeting with the right people, they've already done their homework. They've already looked on your LinkedIn profile. They know what you post. They know what your company does. If it's the right person, they do. They know all of that, right? And so why do you feel a need to talk about your company, talk about your experience, talk about what you do, what you sell, how it benefits people? They don't care. They really don't. If you're with the right people, when you're meeting with people that run companies, and I know most of the people on this call are meeting with people that run companies, they're looking for, I'm going to spend my time with this person. What value will I get from this meeting? So what you have to do is think about, what value are you leading with? And oftentimes we don't. We have an agenda we want to present. We know that they're doing something. Maybe they have, if you're a banker, they have deposits at another bank. You want to get that money over to your bank. So everything in your mind is churning about, how do I do that? So what I want you to do is think about it this way. when you're meeting with people, continue to ask questions. Continue to ask questions. Don't bring up your company. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. It is not counterintuitive. It is a quicker way for people to want to engage with you, because my agenda whenever I meet with someone is, one, to get to know this person, their story. You know why the story is important? Because no one's asking about them. No one's asking, well, how did you start? How did you become a CFO of a company? I mean, you were an engineer, now you're a CFO. Tell me about that journey. No one asks that of people. They're people, those people are usually people where people are trying to get access to because they have product services that they want to sell, but no one's ever trying to get to know them. So what I'm saying, the fastest way in to being able to build value is to give value, to promote value. If you learn from a conversation that someone's really wanting to connect to Randy for whatever reason, Randy's name comes up, you can push back and say, why is meeting Randy so important? And they tell you, well, I know Randy. Would it be helpful if I could make an introduction to Randy? So you've already given value first, right? So what happens from that, from a person receiving the value, when they haven't given anything to you, is why would this person do that? I haven't done anything with them. And it has to be authentic. And so, again, not a system. This is about being authentically you and caring about the individuals that we're in front of. What happens in the day-to-day, because we're pushed for revenue goals or sales goals or whatever it is, we feel like every meeting, every word has to be about the sale. I'm telling you, it doesn't. I have moved into different industries, and luckily I've had some success with those industries, not knowing a thing about the industry. And the only thing that I did differently was move into the industry. My conversation was the same. I wasn't an expert in my industry. I'm still not an expert in my current industry. But what I'm an expert at doing is really trying to figure out what is it that people are trying to do and uncovering what the problem is that they're tasked with, right? Because every business has a problem. They're trying to solve it. If you can be the person that solves problems, they're always going to take your call. So the only thing that I do different that I don't see happening on a very consistent basis is, one, I never bring up the name of my company in meetings unless they ask me. And again, I know that sounds odd to you when you're trying to, drive revenue. I had always heard about working smarter in my career when I was in what I call the sales game, which was presentation, product dumping, capturing all the conversation, giving them 15 or 5 minutes to talk. I'm doing 55 minutes of talking, which makes absolutely zero sense. I'm only doing it today because I've been asked to talk to you. Otherwise, I'd be pretty quiet. And I'm going to ask you some questions. But I will tell you, every industry, what I've learned is I'm able to pull out what people are trying to do, whether that's we are tasked with a problem, we're trying to figure it out. And what I don't do, what other people seem to do because they hear one thing and they pounce on it, I'm collecting a series of concerns. I'm gathering intelligence from those people because I'm trying to figure out, you've listed all these problems. What are the ones that you really, really are the most concerned with? And so if there are 3 or 4 problems that I've heard from a client or a prospect, I'm asking, seems like you have a lot of challenges right now. Which one's capturing the most attention right now? And then what are you doing about it? And they're not being asked that question. I promise you they're not. Because I'm in meetings with people, and for whatever reason, they lean in because they've never been asked these questions, right? And so what I'm saying to you is, in this pandemic, in what we've seen, your approach has to change. It has to adapt to what the current situation is. And I just want you to ask yourself, when you're in those rooms and you leave that meeting, would you buy from you? And that's a question you'll have to answer, right? And what I see people saying a lot of the times, Randy, is I'm in business development. I'll hear that a lot. And what they're really saying to me, and the reason I know that they're saying that to me, is because their behaviors tell me they're really in the transactional sales game, because nothing about their behavior is in business development or relationships. So when I'm introduced to anyone, and this has been something I've built over a year. Just doesn't happen overnight. I'm fortunate, right? I've worked hard to get this brand, but I'm never introduced as anyone in sales or really business development. Typically, it's the introduction is you need to be an Andre Davis or whatever you fill in the blank, right? Whatever that reason is, because I've built the brand that is about value first, always doing the right thing, being authentic, being transparent. And I will tell you, there is something to be said, and Randy and I talked about this. There is something to be said about knowing what clients are a great fit. Now, companies will tell you some companies will tell you that every client's a good fit. Then you're a commodity, right? If you're a great fit for everyone else. Those of us who don't want to be in a commodity business or the vendor business, we aren't a great fit for everyone. So everything we're asking questions of, whether it's CEO, CIO, CTO, CFO, you name it, we're trying to get a feel of, is this a company that we could have an impact on, right? Everything that I do for built interior construction is about not the project game, because in construction, it's about chasing bids, chasing projects. That's not what I do, right? It's funny how I uncover projects for our company in coffee meetings that have nothing to do with projects. You only do that because you're asking questions and you're saying, oh my God, how did that happen? And how important? Why are you moving all this dirt? What's the next phase? What drove all the buildings to come online? You know, there's something driving that. And so I want to get behind not just the project. I want to get behind what's driving a company to build a 40,000 square foot building. What might be driving a company to renovate a space, right? Or to relocate. What people in construction sometimes do, we jump on, oh my God, you're moving? How do we work on your project? I don't care about the project. I'm more interested in the driver. What's driving you to now move across state line and take on 50,000 square feet? Because there's a business case for that. Something drove that. And if I can learn what the business case is, I'm better in position to be able to add value to that client, whether it means our company works on that or I bring another company in. And so when I'm assessing whether a company makes sense for us, I'm asking those questions. And sometimes my language is, I'm not sure if we match, but I'd love to continue to talk to figure out if we might be of value. And here's my promise. If we can't be of value, what I'll do is I'll step aside and I'll bring another firm forward that'll be a better fit. And people even think that's counterintuitive, but at the end of the day, if you're going with this servant leader mindset and you're trying to be a valuable person and someone that's bringing value first instead of putting our hands out and asking for everything, which is typically what salespeople do. They're always presenting because they want, but they never want to give. And luckily, I'm not around a lot of people like that because I'm around a lot of people like Randy and others on this call that want to give value first, and they want to help first, and they want to be strategic first and partner centric, and they want to bring others to the table and collaborate. And so that mix is what allows an owner to lean in and go, I just had a meeting with this guy I never met. He said some things. I've never really been asked that question. I need to get with him again. And so my agenda in meetings, and I'm bouncing around a little bit because that's just what I do, by the way. My agenda in my meetings are, how do I get to the second meeting? Did I do enough in that meeting to get me to the second meeting? And if you're having trouble rather, getting to the second meeting, you need to think about, what did you just do in that first meeting? What was your behavior? Because it's a behavioral thing, right? We think all the time that we're really being this helpful. We hear the terms which wear me out today, and I don't want to offend anybody, but they resource, consultant, advocate. I want you to stop using those terms, right? Because they're overused right now, and everyone says it. So there's no differentiating thing that you're using that someone else is not using. I don't use any of those things. My behavior speaks so loud that I don't need to say what I'm doing. I'm just doing it, right? It's being received. And so everything that I do is really all about trying to figure out what other people are trying to do in a servant leadership mindset, and really trying to pull back the curtains on what really is the struggles with an organization. And that's what people at high level want. They want to know they're spending time, valuable time, with people that can add value and solve problems for their organization. So I want to pull back from that a little bit. That was kind of just a rant. I'd love to see some engagement on this, because I could continue to talk about some of the things and experiences and what's happened from this way of engagement and share examples of that. I will share this one example, and then Randy, I'd love to open up the questions, because I want this to be an engagement where we kind of bounce ideas off each other, and certainly, just throw out things that you just are confused about, or you just go, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm happy to answer those things, but I'll tell you this, and I won't name companies, right? But I had some intelligence that there was a company, and this is speaking to the business that we're in, that there was a company that was going to be building something that I think that we could make an impact on. And I've been trying to get access to the CEO for several attempts. Wasn't dodging me, but just we would identify a date, and then something would pull him away. We identify a date and something would pull him away, and finally got in. And last minute, the secretary comes in and goes, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Whoever, he's the CEO of a massive organization, got called into a meeting." So in my mind, I said, that was a waste of my time. And one takeaway let me stop there. One takeaway I want you to think about: if you're chasing people, they don't think you're valuable, right? If they're not responding to you and you're chasing and it's all your energy and they have no skin in the game, you haven't proven valuable enough for them to be able to return your call. So you have to do something different. One or two things you can do. You can continue to chase and play that rat wheel that I don't play. Or after the third attempt of me reaching out, if I get nothing back, then I'm sending an email out saying, it sounds like there's just not interest in talking right now, and I'm okay with that. If down the road it makes sense for us to engage, I'd love you to reach out, but moving forward, you won't see emails from me, and you can clear that, you can warm that up. But I want you to take the control back, because your time is too valuable to spend with people that you have to. That's not what this is. That's the sales game. That's the vendor game. I won't do that. I'll just take myself out of the equation politely, and it's not something where I'm mad or sour about it. My time is valuable too, and I'm valuable. And so if there's no communication back, I'm going to control that back and say, hey, it sounds like we're just not interested. And so for that reason, we'll just go ahead and close that file down. But if things open up and you feel like there's a need for us to talk down the road, hey, please reach out to me. I'd love to re-engage. And I'll leave it at that. And it doesn't mean that later on you can't come back after you've seen something after 6 months. They've grown, expanded, and say things to them. But let me finish up that story. So CEO gets pulled out. And in my mind, because I've been wanting this meeting, because it's got magnificent revenue potential for a firm our size, I was a little bit frustrated. And so I said, well, this is going to be a waste of my time. This really is a waste of my time. So the CFO comes out and he says, Andre, I've heard great things about you, and I've heard great things about your company. You guys do some magnificent things, and I'd love to sit with you since, the CEO can't be with you. And I said, oh, that's kind of you to say that. I would love to talk about our company, but that's not why I'm here. I'm really here to learn what you have going on, why you have all the things happening at this business, and I won't name. And so we started to talk about that. And he was sharing some great ideas about things he wanted to do, why they were doing this in terms of what was happening in the business, which is what I ultimately wanted. I already had intelligence about what they were building, so I knew that, but I just wasn't sharing it. Oftentimes what we'll do is we have this intelligence, and that's the first thing we do when we get our coffee. Oh my God, I heard you were doing this. How do we get on that project? Oh my God, I heard you were going to change your CFO, or you're going to bring in a new CFO. How do we get our company to be your CFO, or what's the process there? I don't want you to do that. I want you to hold on. I want you to help them self-reveal that they're looking for a CFO or whatever that service is, right? And when they start asking you, hey, or saying to you, I'm looking for a CFO, I want you to tell me what's driving you to look for a CFO. Like what in the business changed? Why now? And let them describe. And then ask them, what are the things that you most care about on this when you start to look at these firms and consider firms? What are the things that are non-negotiable for you? and let them reveal that. And if your company speaks to all of that, then you start talking about the things that your company and using scenarios about, well, we help this client do this. So let me pivot back to what I'm doing. So I know I'm jumping around. That's just what I do. So catch up. You can't catch up, take notes. So I'm back at the company. He starts asking about our company, and I'm resisting talking about our company because that's not why I'm there. And so we continue to talk. I'm getting intelligent. He asked me again, hey, Bill does some really cool things. Tell me about Bill. And I said, yeah, we are doing some really magnificent things. I think we're in an innovative space. We're really disrupting some things right now. And so again, we're excited about that, but I'm really here to learn about some of the things you're doing. I've seen a lot of things happen out here. Tell me more about what you just said here. And I'm pushing back, right? And the reason I'm doing that, because I want them to know, and this is not a system, but I want them to know, I'm not here to talk about our company. Now, here's what I do believe. When they ask you 3 times, you probably ought to tell them what you do, right? You can't have a CEO ask you 3 times what your company does and never answer it, right? That's going to be rude. So my rule is on the 3rd time they ask, you talk about the firm and you talk about what you do. What we do, though, as people in sales, us who are not in sales and do other things, we do what I described, right? If you're in sales, the first thing you do is talk about the company. We were founded in 1984. We have 2 partners. They merged on the back of blah, 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 blah. They don't care. They don't care about that, right? They're too busy. Lower level people care about that. Oh my God, you were founded when? And they have no power making capacity. They can't write a check. They can't make a decision. So if you need to be with people that make decisions, stop spending time with those people. They'll hear your story, but it won't matter. What I'm suggesting is when you're talking to CEOs and CFOs and COOs, there's a different conversation that has to happen, because what I'm wanting, what I'm positioning is I want those CEOs and everyone that runs companies and entrepreneurs to be able to say, I met with this guy named Andre. He's got some really good ideas. They talk to other CEOs. Will they advocate on your behalf because of your behavior of meeting with them? And if we were honest with ourselves, when we walk out of meetings, we say, hey, that was a great meeting. And if someone was to ask you why, you couldn't tell them why. And so what I want to do is just open up the dialogue with you to know that this is not a system. This is just a conversation. And think about the example I shared about if you had met someone at coffee and you had a ring in your pocket and your mother in the car waiting, and you were after that meeting heading to an altar. How foolish that would be. We leave meetings every day and we think, oh my God, they're perfect for us. And we can't say why they're perfect. I'm trying to help you really get into differentiating yourself from other people, because they're being hit by a lot of people. And what I'll kind of lastly say is I want you to be careful. And Erin is perfect for this conversation because she's the master of LinkedIn. I want you to really be careful about LinkedIn. Right now, and I know many others are too, I am bombarded by people that are bait and switching. And what I mean by that is they have the interest of going, hey, Andre, I've seen some of the podcasts and stuff that you do virtually and all this, and I'd love to get to know you better. And then once I accept, I get an email this long that says, hey, our company does all these great things, and I thought Bill might be able to benefit from it. I want you to be careful about that, right? That's not what LinkedIn's for. It's about building meaningful, sustainable relationships. You don't build that by leading with a transactional methodology. And people like me that really want to be helpful to other people, that want to be open to meeting, that want to be helpful, that want to be mentoring and coaching and helping people gain access to other companies, because the benefit I have by having access to a lot of people that run companies in Kansas City and across the country is they know I'm bringing value. So it behooves me to have a bunch of people that I know that can bring valuable, whether it's insights, whether it's they have a solution that their company can solve. They want me to do that. They depend on me to do that. They value me doing that. And more importantly, they trust me to bring in people that can make an impact on their business outside of the business that I do. And so when you bait and switch me and you say to me, I want to get to know you, and then you put your sales thing on me, you got to believe I'm not going to respond to that. I'm never going to respond to that. And you're going to ruin your network by doing that. So I really want you to be careful about that. And I know sometimes in a pandemic, not sometimes, but in this pandemic, we weren't able to be face to face with people. So I think we got a little bit desperate. We lost a little bit of our etiquette, and we thought we would blast out a whole bunch of information to people, hoping that somebody would bite. But what you start becoming is your advocacy goes way down, and then your brand suffers because you become known as the person that's only about blasting people out. I don't do that. If I'm connecting with you, I've seen an article, I've read about your company. There's something that makes me want to connect with you, not because I want to sell you anything that I do or get you involved in any nonprofits that I serve on. I like meeting other leaders. The reason that Randy and I got together is because Linda Endicott, we thought the same way. And Linda thought putting us together would be valuable. And look where we are. It's proven to be valuable because now I go to his webinars. I'm talking to you all right now. And that's the benefit of that. And when the timing's right, if I need anything from Randy, all I have to do is email Randy and it's done. So I talk to a lot of younger entrepreneurs and professionals that are trying to really build networks. And one thing they say is, God, I'd love to have the access you do. I have a lot of connections and blah, blah, this. And so what I'll do is I'll push back and go, of your connections, people that run companies, write checks, entrepreneurs, who are the ones you could call tomorrow for coffee the next day? And there's typically crickets. So they have connections. You don't have any meaningful relationships. So folks like us on this call, because I know the folks on this call, you have people that run companies that if you needed to email, go ahead, I need to pick your brain for a couple of minutes. Can we hop on a virtual call? They would do it. Then you have a network built upon relationships, not a network built on just connecting. So I want to step back. Randy, I'll toss to you. I'm happy to answer some questions. We could talk a long time. I know we don't have that amount of time today. So I really would like to maybe just field some questions and get anybody's feedback. I haven't figured everything out. I'm still figuring things out. I only know how to be me, which is authentically me. And that's the work that I do and continue to do. And so anyway, I'll pause, let Randy kind of field some questions. Happy to answer what I can.
Yeah, you guys have to have some great questions after that starts. So type it in the chat and we'll get you opened up. Andre, aside from the people who are trolling LinkedIn that we get pummeled with of they're going to be our best friend and then they're going to sell us on the very next message. Yeah. How important is it? You're right. Everybody does go. You mentioned it earlier. Everybody goes and researches you. They know what you're putting on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and your website. And so how important is it for you to focus on creating value on those platforms as opposed to just selling on your profile on LinkedIn? I know it doesn't even say that you sell.
Right.
So I'm assuming there's some intentionality to what you're putting.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That was part of what I wanted to cover, and I get lost on these things, right? So you have to bear with me. My mind runs like that. So yeah, we have to be careful about what we do. And again, Erin Hayden she's magnificent at this, right? I gotta give her props. I'm not an expert on LinkedIn, but I'm a consumer of content. I'm a consumer of thought, right? I love the conversation around leadership. And so what we tend to do, and I see this happening a lot, is we have folks that are blasting out LinkedIn messages that's all about their company, right? It's all about them and the products and all that. And there's an infomercial there. It's interesting you say that you don't see sales on my profile because I'm not really in the sales business, right? I'm in the impact business. I know why I do what I do. I'm trying to make a long-lasting impact on the people that I encounter day to day. And if that means that I'm able to help people do the business I'm in and solving problems that way, then that's magnificent. If it means that I'm helping people get access to board opportunities they didn't have, that's access. If it means that I'm helping people career hop, which I do, right? That's magnificent. But at the end of the day, if I'm ever introduced as someone in sales, the first question I have is, what made you think that I was in sales? Like, what about me said sales? Because there's nothing about me that says sales. There's not a thing. when I'm in a room. I don't have a brochure. I don't show you anything. I'm having coffee or lunch or a drink, and I'm asking a bunch of questions. I'm really authentically getting to know you. You've got to be able to be in that relationship game, because I will tell you, it is the fastest way to revenue than a transaction will ever be. And so on the platforms, what we're seeing is people are promoting their company, and they're telling everything great about their. We have a website for that, by the way. People that are following LinkedIn, for the most part, are looking for thought leadership. They're looking for ideas. They're looking for different ways to think. They're looking for business intelligence. They're not looking for product, service, or solutions. They're not, right? So what I post is about 95% of my posts are housed around how we think, our emotional intelligence, how we think, how we engage, how do we treat our people, how's our culture, how do we think about things different. We're hearing words now called futurist. How are you thinking about innovation, whatever that means, right? How are you adapting to the current time? We're hearing a lot about return to work. What does it look like? That's all on there. So your people are posting. That's great, right? Because that's information that we all need to know, right? Leaders and companies, we need to know kind of how we're going to treat our employees and all that. And I do another talk on that where I talk to owners about not being rigid, and we talked about that at the beginning. So you're seeing some conversation. What does that look like? Is it hybrid? Is it already coming back to work? Is it a collaboration where you meet? So nothing about my profile. If you got on my profile today, you would see very little about my company and the products or services that we do. You would see a whole bunch about kudos to people. We just did a kudos to Kyle Myers. I've known Kyle Myers. He just took over at PNC. We did something with Jessica Lee because she did an interview with Stacey Prosser at the Business Journal. I thought was a nice interview. We did something for the Women Mean Business. So Erin is magnificent. I'm calling Erin out because Erin is really, she understands how to give people the spotlight and to step out in the shadows, right? And so she did a whole thing on LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, Juneteenth, our social impact, our community impact, right? So a lot of that's where I sit, is around those. And so when I do post about something significant about our company, I get all the eyeballs because it's not normally what they see. So there is an agenda at points when we're working on a high pro project, like we're doing the renovation work at the Webster House, one of the projects that we're on. We just finished up Johnson County Courthouse's new space in Olathe, which is 7 floors of our work. And we're also just finished up the Civic Council's building. We're working also on Torch AI, which is a new company. So we are doing work, and we'll talk about that. You just won't see me running my mouth on LinkedIn about all the things that we do, because I think that that's not the platform for me to do that. I'd rather people ask me. They'll see some of the things. They'll see some of that stuff. And so that's what I would tell you, is be careful about what you're posting on LinkedIn, because you'll be known as an infomercial person, and no one's going to follow when you have really good content to share. And it would be good content, but because you blasted people with all the content about your company, they're going to overlook that content because they think it's another infomercial about your firm.
Go to Michelle.
Hi, Andre. Thanks for your talk today. It's really good. Some really good reminders on selling. It makes me think about when I've had sales teams, typically when I call it dumping their briefcase in presentations, is because they don't have enough pipeline of prospects. So they get desperate and feel like they have to close in every meeting.
Right.
How do you go about building prospects so that you can have those true consultative meetings and you don't have to feel like you're kind of pushing things too hard? Because I truly think having that pipeline is what allows you just to kind of sit back and choose the clients that you want to work with.
Yeah, so, I appreciate that question. And what I would tell you is you don't have to change, whether you have a full pipeline or a empty pipeline, really. Because what happens in an empty pipeline discussion, your desperation shows up. Mm-hmm. Nothing about your products and services shows up, right? You're desperate. I got to make this sell. Hey, man, how do we get, and if you just stay true, that pipeline will never be empty. Because remember when I talked about the business advocacy piece? I used to hear all the time about working smarter, work smarter, not harder. I was like, what does that mean, though? I mean, of course we would have worked smarter, but what does it mean? And over the last 10, 15 years because I've built rather um, a nice group of people that seem to think that I have a unique way about me, right? I have a ton of business advocacy. You would be amazed at the emails I get from other people that say, "Hey, Andre, there's a client that I want to introduce you to. I think Built would be perfect for that for you. I'm going to introduce you to the CEO." Your pipeline is never full when you have people advocating on your behalf. What they won't do is advocate on a salesperson's behalf because they will never turn a salesperson over to another CEO. They won't. You'll be stuck at the gate. So what I would tell you is when you're building your pipeline, sometimes we get into this whole thing where we won't ask for help. Like we're leaders and we run companies and we've had success and we know we want to spend time with that C-suite and we just can't get in. We just, and we want to ask for help. I still ask for help. I still ask people, would you be comfortable doing an introduction to X, Y, and Z because I really would like to get to know them better. You should do that because we're all willing to help the right people do that because we know you're going to perform well. And my 100% guarantee is whenever I'm introduced to anyone that I haven't met through someone, my guarantee is you'll never get a call back from someone saying, "Why did you introduce me to Andre? He won't leave me alone. All he talked about was his company." And that is my guarantee. You will never do that. Luckily, in my 20 plus years, I've never had someone call back or say, "Why did you introduce me to Andre? God, that is just not somebody I want to spend time with." So you got to be careful, right? Because when people introduce you to other people, and then the person that you met goes back to the person that introduced you and goes, "Oh my God, I love that guy. Thank you." Then you're building advocacy at that level. And that advocacy will never allow your pipeline to be empty. I never have an empty pipeline. Every coffee meeting, because at the end of the coffee meeting, it'll say, if you're behaving right, what they say, and Randy and everybody else will chime in, "How do I help you? Like, what could I do to be of value? You've been so helpful to me in this coffee. How can I help you?" And if there are ways for them to be helpful, tell them that, hey, if you ever run across someone that's looking for unique ways to renovate a space or build something that is really innovative, think about us. Think about us. That's all I would ask. And as we get to know each other, we'll figure out ways to be helpful. I don't think that you have to meet someone one time and know automatically how you're helpful. Randy and I met months ago, and we don't know how we can help each other in business. What we do know, though, is we're willing to help each other in business. And when the time came that Randy said, "Hey, Andre, I need your help on something," I drop everything I'm doing. I answer the call, hop on a virtual call, meet for coffee, whatever that is, and figure out how do I be helpful. And sometimes it's just about knowing that people are willing to be helpful. Scott Havens is the same way. If I meet with Scott, we're all trying to figure out, how do we all collectively partner with each other? So I think it's taking away an empty pipeline discussion to figure out how do you go out and have meaningful conversations with people and build advocacy around that where you have now multiple people saying really great things about you. That's how you start collapsing timeframes and you expand your pipeline that way. I hope that's helpful, Michelle.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
If I pulled this up to a little bit higher level, it sounds like your purpose is greater than closing a deal, making this month, making this quarter, hitting this commission. So you remind yourself that you've got a bigger purpose.
Yeah, there's always a bigger purpose because at the end of the day, when I mentioned earlier, all I'm trying to do is, did I do enough in that meeting to get me to be invited to the second meeting? And it's not about our products that get us invited back. It's about our emotional intelligence. It's about our thoughts. What did we ask? What of our so I don't think about competition in that. Well, certainly we have competition. I don't think about it. I think that if I'm building relationships, they're not going to consider competition because Andre is so valuable. Why would you want to go to someone that's less valuable? Because I'm going to help in all these other ways, right? There was one client, not even a client, but someone I had met. And the third, and I think I shared this with you, Randy, in a one-on-one with us, but I met her and we never talked about what I did. The third coffee meeting, she says, "What do you guys do?" And I go, oh, what we do? We haven't talked about it. So we talked about what we did. And she goes, well, we always are renovating, expanding spaces. How could we see your work? You want that. You want people to ask you, what do you do? Tell me about your firm. But we don't. We just jump in and start telling people about it, and it's just too cold. That's not what it is. Sales is not that way today. I grew up in that transactional world. Trust me. I grew up in the presentation that if they said this, then I was prepared to say that. If they blinked, then I was prepared to pull this out. If we were going to close business, were we going to use your pen or should we use my pen? I grew up in that world. That never seemed to fit how I was wired. I was always really personable. I love people. I still do. I want to help people. And what I discovered is by not even worrying about the business happens. And I know that doesn't sound possible. I'm telling you, that is what has happened in my 20 plus years experience. I can't tell you the number of opportunities I've bumped into because I'm authentically asking questions about, because I really do want to know people's story. Kelly Mangori is on the phone. Her and I, she's magnificent at this. About building relationships and bringing people together. And what they know from that is, oh my God, you brought me together. You know what happened from that? We were able to do business. If it weren't for you, I would be able to do business. So I know now I've already dumped enough value on that person that whatever I need, they will drop everything they do to answer my call, send an email, meet with me. David Oliver is one of my biggest advocates. He's the only person I know, well, one of the only people I know that will not only do the introduction, but go along with you on the meeting. So that's a different thing, right? Because you have a strong advocate when they're willing not only to do the introduction, but then they show up at the meeting. And when they show up at the meeting, they introduce you in a way that you have to sit back and go, let me look at my LinkedIn profile. Did I do all that? It's just, but that's what the advocacy piece is. These are the people that are going to bring you business because they know you and they know your business because they've done their homework and they've been around you. And it's not the business that they're bringing people to, it's you. They want people to meet you. And when people that run companies meet you, if you're asking the right questions, you don't have an agenda about your company, I promise you, those CEOs are always going to give you time because it's so unique to anyone else trying to get time from them that you just stand out and you kind of rub off on them and you have an effect on them. And this is what this is about. Relationships are about having an effect. Think about your marriage, think about your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, whoever. There was an effect. And I will tell you, man, it's an awesome experience when you have that happening, especially when I've entered two different industries and knew nothing about commercial banking. I didn't know anything about construction, and I've had success in both. And the only thing I can tell you is I'm really good at the people game. I understand how to interact with people and to build the case for wanting to hear more or to be around more of Andre and figure out, is he someone that can help us solve the problems that we face day to day in business? Because most companies have problems that they're trying to solve. You just don't know them because you're presenting.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody in their 20s a few weeks ago, and they said, "Gosh, you know so many people, you've done so much stuff, but I don't want to wait as long as you did to get to that point." And I'm like, "Well, this isn't a sprint. Like, you just wake up one morning and decide, I think I'll go be who I want to go be." Talk about patience. I know you and I've talked about there are deals that have happened for you that took years from the first introduction to before it ever turned into something.
Yeah, that was new to me before I started getting into I never understood the relation game, by the way, right? I never understood why you wanted to build relationships with people because I just want to close business and go home. I don't want to go spend time with these people. But when you started working with clients year after year and getting to know their families and some of the challenges that families have, and then the business, and God, it's just awesome. It's awesome to have a business family. So sometimes we want to push our agenda before their agenda, and you become pushy. We don't know sometimes there's a business case of why things are stalling or why things have to pause. In the pandemic, our organization, we were trying to push this. We could solve all your problems because this pandemic's going on. And I really said to our team, be careful about that. Because if we're not leading out with, how are you doing? How's the pandemic affecting the business? What are you guys focused on right now? How can I help you? I know we've talked a lot about some of the things that we do that we could do from a facilities standpoint. I want to table that for now. What are the things you need now? And making that authentic, it's going to fall on deaf ears and you're going to sound like an opportunist. So true business doesn't happen fast. You almost have to question why it's happening so fast, right? There are unique situations, timing that it happens, but in most businesses, whether you're in professional services, accounting, legal, you're not going to move a law firm just by email blast. You're not, right? So what I would tell you is if you slow the process down and you get to know them better, the revenue you'll generate will quadruple over a transactional approach. You might get a little piece of something because you hit the right timing, they were looking to switch, whatever. You get the bigger piece when you slow everything down and you try to get an idea of what people are trying to do and why. I'm always trying to figure out why. And so it doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't mean that I don't care about revenue. I do. Everything I do is about leveraging and building a case for us to be able to drive revenue. I'm just not doing it in a transactional way. And so when we're chasing CEOs or people that make decisions all day long by email blasts, phone calls, voicemails, et cetera, I'm having CEOs call me and go, hey, Andre, you said some good points last week and we want to follow up on that. Could we hop on a virtual call and talk more about that? That is a faster mechanism to revenue than the latter part of that, right? And that's what I'm after. So every engagement, everything I do, even when I know we're a great fit, there's something wrong with leaving that meeting and waiting a couple of days and going, you know what? I was thinking about what you said in that meeting and you brought up a challenge that you're facing. We dealt with that with the company. Here's how we solved it. If you think there's a way for us to, if you think that might be helpful to you, why don't we hop on a call and talk it through? And if it makes sense, let's keep talking. If it doesn't, then we won't worry about it. Being that honest, because honesty doesn't exist in business, mostly. There's some of us that really do it well, but there's always an intent. Like, I'll help you, I'll do that, but I want you to buy in first and then I'll help you. That's typically what we do. And what I'm saying is don't do that, because what you're in front of people that can explode your business. And I've seen it happen in some of the work that I do, because this is the business that I'm in, and I love what I do, and I love engaging. I love having this conversation. If you could see people's expressions in some of the meetings I have, it would blow you away. If I'd have known that 20 years ago, that a presentation wasn't necessary, brochures weren't necessary, talking about the history of your company, they don't care, right? That it was just trying to get to figure out, who are you? How did you become a CEO? What's going on in the business? What's the next 3 years look like? What are you doing now? What's the next wave? What are you worried about? How are you dealing with work from home? What's remote work? All these questions has nothing to do with what I do for a living, but it does have everything that I do. That it has everything to do with what I do for a living, what I'm trying to do with these people. And so if you're looking for this fast, gotta close it, you're gonna be a commodity. And people are gonna, when you walk into them, they'll know you're really in the sales game. And there's nothing wrong with being in the sales game, right? I'm in the revenue generating game. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I walk in rooms and others walk in rooms, we're not announced as, oh, that's the guy that sold me this. Oh yeah, that's Andre. He's the guy that's that. It's never that, ever. Because if it is, I question it. Like, why would you introduce me as sales when, I mean, what about me set sales, right? Because we all have quotas, we all have things we're trying to do. I'm just saying this is a faster path to the revenue and acquiring business than it is from a sales transactional method. And it's just an idea. You don't have to do this. You can continue, if you've had success doing sales the way you want. Think about, is that grind? Is it a grind for you? That would be a grind for me. I would have never gone into any business if I knew it was super transactional. I only take work where I know it's about building significant, meaningful relationships and being able to solve problems. And people want to know why you exist. We don't typically tell people why we exist in business. We just tell people why we're a great fit for them. And oftentimes they haven't even told you what they're after, but you think you're a great fit. And what I'm saying is that the right fit? That's why I said, think about the questions I ask on the front end. And you know the answer to those questions. You don't have to answer them, but you know the questions. What do people say about you? when you leave. And when you hear people, I've seen emails from people, which has been, sometimes I think if they only knew me, they wouldn't be saying that, right? That just blow me away sometimes. That people say great things, and it's flattering because there's work behind that. That didn't happen overnight. And to your point, Randy, our young professional think it happens overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. Relationships take time. That's why they're called relationships, right? And just think about our own personal stories, right? We're married to people. We're dating people. The significant relationships took time to sort of mature. We got to give ourselves time, even though we have quotas, because in that period, they're thinking, I like this guy. There's another CEO that's having the same problem. I would love for him to talk to him. But when you're coming at it from a sales bucket, they're not doing that because they know you're just going to hard charge. And those of us love to make introductions. We're never going to introduce people that are hard charged. That's why I say in your LinkedIn, be careful about the hard charging methodology because you're gonna lose some people. And if you've done that, don't beat yourself up. Just pivot. Just adapt. Just change. I'm always adapting. I haven't figured everything out. I'm figuring things out. That's why I listen to a lot of way people think. I tend to like how Simon Sinek thinks about engaging with people. You need to know what your why is, I believe, and why you're in business and why you're meeting with people. I'm here to help. I'm here to be of value. I want to know about your company and you and that. And I think there's value in that. So
let's close here with one of your earlier questions. And you touched on it there just a minute ago. How did the pandemic affect your leadership style? What are some of the changes you've seen you make over the past year to adapt, and what are some of the risks of being rigid that you talked about a little earlier?
Oh yeah, great question. I'll try to get this out before we run out of time, and I'm happy to stay longer if people have more questions. Really, these are important conversations because in the pandemic, I was getting emails from people saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I'm working virtually. That's what I'm doing." And so I think we talked about the gifts of the pandemic. We have to meet people where they are. So the adaptation to me, which I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. I love being in front of people. I love meeting with people, but I had better access in the pandemic than I had prior to the pandemic. And what I mean by that, I would get in my car, drive 30 minutes to a meeting, spend an hour talking about everything else, drive 30 minutes back to the office or remote or a coffee shop and work. I lost 2 hours. So I gained access because I said, you know what? I'd love to hop on a virtual call and just chat really quick. That was a 15-minute call. They didn't have to carve out a whole bunch of time, so the access was better. And quite frankly, we can do things virtually that we don't need to do in person, right? We can do little things, right? And so I think I adapted. I think I was flexible. I had requested in-person meetings with people. They weren't comfortable. And they said, could we hop on a virtual call? Absolutely, we can hop on a virtual call. You got to meet people where they are. I think the leadership style of it, and I'll talk about the leadership style. I think you have to be careful. I know early on in our shop, we had heard some language around anxiety internally, and what I've talked about in that was we need to be asking people rather than telling people to come back. We need to ask them, how do you feel about coming back? And how do we collectively address remote work style? Is it 2 days a week? Is it 3 days a week? Is it 4 days a week? What's the hybrid going to look like? What works better for you? You're going to run into people that have family members that are exposed to COVID and they can't risk it. So why would you make a good employee that's productive, that's shown you that they can work remotely? Why would you put a rigid schedule in place for those people who are producing, who have produced in the pandemic very well? And now you're saying, I want you back in the office 8 to 5 instead of giving them consensus, right? Leaders don't do that. We get buy-in from our teams because they're the most important piece of business that we have in our business. Without our people, we can't do business. So if you're rigid, the disadvantages of being rigid, what will happen from being rigid is what I talked to before. I've seen people in professional services, and I'm sort of that way too now. I've got a young son that I won't take a meeting before 8:30. I just won't anymore. It makes no sense to talk at 7:30. Why are we talking at 7:30? We can hop on a virtual call at 8:30, get done at 8:45. But I've got a son that's in my bed messing around at 8:30. That's fun for me, and I've got a little taste of that, and I'm not giving that up anymore. I would run out to board meetings at 7, be in another meeting at 8:30, another meeting at 10, and I'm missing all the life. People have gotten a taste of life back, right? And balance, a little bit of balance. And they're productive still at work because it's easiest for us to be productive because we just get dressed, we don't get dressed, right? And we just do our thing. And so you're asking people to give that up because you want them back at work, and you haven't asked them, what does return to work look like? So I always believe in asking people, if you care about culture, you're going to lose people. We're seeing people leave. I think the Business Journal had an article that said 30% of the workplace in Kansas City, if forced to go back to work, will quit. That's a real problem because we have a talent shortage in this market. What do you do if your best employees quit? They'll go to another company that allows them, for the same money, same benefits, to be able to work remotely. And so you just have to be careful. And I'm not saying that we're not all going to be at work at some point. I think you have to just be careful about putting demands on people who have been producing in the pandemic for your company. And you've done well in the pandemic. Be careful about putting those rigid measures in place, because I think that's going to backfire.
Well, I was looking back at some of the earlier comments to your questions. Tony hit a lot on priorities and communication that ties in so much to what you've been talking about.
Yeah.
And Mike has mentioned even to me the not getting married on the first date comment.
Yeah, it'd be weird, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be so weird to think that. I mean, and look, I get love at first sight. I get that. But in a business setting, I mean, think about that in a business setting, right? If we ever did that, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And look, people are busy and they got a lot going on. And the pandemic, some of us have thrived in the pandemic, and that's great. Other companies are still struggling, right? And so we got to be sensitive to that. I'm very sensitive. We had a great year last year, but it doesn't matter. That year's over, right? And so and that's fun. And look, but some didn't. And so we got to be careful. And so I just think that this engagement piece is really about us being able to overcome, adapt, be flexible, meet people where they are, add value first, and just approach business as with a servant leadership mindset. And I promise you, I just want, if you're listening still, try it on your next meeting. Don't talk about your company. Only talk about them, and see what happens. And please let me know what happens. I'd love to get any kind of success stories, or oh my God, this was, or maybe Andre, this didn't work for me. I don't know what to do next. I will help you. I promise you, I'll help you through that, because nothing has to happen on the first time you try it. Like, I don't have an agenda of having a PO signed on the first try. What I know is I want to be memorable in that meeting, and I want them to be able to invite me back to the second meeting. That's all I want. And that's where the work can be done. But you need to do intelligence from the first meeting to be able to see where you go in the second meeting.
Well, this has been awesome as usual. I always love spending time with you. You just energized, and we could spend several more hours just talking about all the things you do.
I thought we were going to noon. Is that not the thing? I thought we were going to noon. Are we not going to noon now?
This is fast for you and me to keep it to an hour.
This is super fast. And kudos to you, because typically I would run an hour and a half, or maybe an hour and 45 minutes. But I was trying to keep my discipline about myself. I know we've got some military people on the call, and trying to stay disciplined. So
all right. Well, thanks for all your insights and all the things you do to make the community better.
Hey, Randy, thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a good morning.
All right. You guys have an awesome weekend.
See ya.
Bye.